Alright, what's up guys? Got a Chevy G30 van. I'm gonna change the brakes. I'm out camping. So the difference between a Chevy G30 and a G20, which there are more videos for, is that the brakes components are slightly different, a little more heavy duty on the G30, I understand, based on seeing some videos of G20s and comparing that to, say, some videos I found on, the CK trucks, like the 3500 series. The brakes look more similar to those. So one of the indicators was squealing on my front brake, so we're towing about a 3,500 pound trailer. Just want to make sure my brakes were in good shape for the towing, going down some grades, and obviously didn't want to damage my rotors. And I had a little time sitting here at the campsite. Kids are out paddling on the lake. The good news is I'm no expert at all, so if I can do it, you can do it. So I've done one already, and now I'm not as uneducated on this. So got a jack stand, and I pre-loosened these guys already. So I'm gonna start with that. Got to get this guy off the ground, and then I'll show you the next part. So here's literally all the tools I'm using. If I was home, it'd be way faster because I have more correct equipment, power driver or impact wrench to get the lug nuts off, and better jack stands and jacks and all that. So like I said, the good news is if you have these few things, you'll be ready to go. So the thing, this is a really crappy C-clamp because it has a tiny little guy you can barely twist. That's gonna be for compressing the, I guess it's a brake caliper. I don't even know what that stuff's all called. You need a 3/8 inch. This guy right here, 3/8 inch, the big one. Hex. If you have a driver bit, that's gonna be easier to actually get the brake pads detached and then reattached. And then mallet is just to, and a screwdriver, just to get things off. Where's the caliper or the popping out the little hex nut things that hold the brake pads on. Like I said, I'm no expert. If I say something wrong, sorry for that. If I use the wrong terminology, but the good news is anyone can do this because I can. All right, so I got this up just enough to get this guy spinning off the ground, and I'll start taking these apart. Okay, so I got the lug nuts off. Obviously, I'm gonna try and keep them out of the dirt. Just get the tire off. Doing this one-handed. Ah. All right, tire's off. So here's the parts, and this is what was hard for me on YouTube videos, was I just couldn't see what I was supposed to be looking at, and I wasted time going back and forth to O'Reilly when I was camping, miles from wherever I was, to get things I didn't know I needed. So, like I said, the key ingredient to this is going to be this 3/8 inch hex. Allen wrench, I suppose. If you have it on a drill driver, then lucky you. Alright, so you see how these guys here, I suppose it's the caliper, that's what I understand to be called. It's super heavy, so you actually want a jack stand or a second person to hold it, because I'm not going to detach it from this brake line. And I read several things where people are saying you need to bleed the brakes and you got to do all this stuff, and I didn't find that to be true. I found a guy on a forum who said nope, it can be way simpler. So I went the simple route, and it worked on the first one. So I'm going to show you the way I did it. If it's not right, well, so far it works. But anyway, if someone knows better, chime in, that's cool. I'm doing this for free, you know what I'm saying? All right, so there's little hexy guys right here. This is what matters. This is the whole crux of the, I'm gonna try and get a good video clip. Oh, right there. This is the hexy guy you gotta get going on. There's two of these. There's one here. You can see where I am. Let's go wider. So you can see there's one here on the top, This was gonna actually hold the brake pads together. So there's a brake pad, and the other one back is actually in here, right there. You can see it. My finger's pointing. So you take off this. It's not even an actual screw. It has threads, but only at the back, and then you pop them out. So this is what I didn't know. It took me a while to figure this out. So here's another one, right here. Hello, Hexy guy. Okay, so I'm gonna loosen those, and then you'll see me take off this whole assembly here. All right, hold on. Okay, so we're going to the left, but it's backwards, right? So these pins are going through this. This is what I'm loosening, is this same pin. So do you see this pin? All right, this pin. I say it's a pin because it has threads only on this side. So you loosen them till it's basically not moving anymore, and then you pop them out with a screw. You just push on it with a screwdriver or another, you know, whatever long and pokey thing you can do there. All right, so this part feels sketch because they're tight, and my van's up on jacks. So I'm gonna loosen that, and then we'll talk. Okay, so at first it's tight, you know, because these have been on there for years, no doubt. So this guy, unfortunately, I don't have a drill driver, or a ratchet with me. I have all that at home, yeah, of course, in a toolbox. So this, you know, we just gotta redo it a bunch of times. That first tug is sketchy because the van's up on jacks in the rocks, and you gotta give it a good pull. You might even need this hex wrench, even if you have a drill driver bit, because it's so tight, just to get it going, you know, kind of like the lug nuts on the wheel. Anyway, you get the point. All right, I'm gonna loosen these and show you how to pop one out. Okay, so I've unscrewed, I believe, this bolt as far as the actual, it's not a real bolt, but I don't know, a pin, as far as the threads. There's only a short amount of threads on it, half an inch or something of thread, so you're not really unscrewing it like all the way out. So you see how now this guy is in there, and this one is still, so this is like, you know, depressed, that pin, whereas that one's still outside of the caliper thing. All right, so I'm gonna try and pop this guy out. I'm just gonna I got the ball end of one of these smaller hexes. I'm just gonna stick it in there and pop it out, I think, as I recall yesterday. All right, so you see I got it depressed quite a bit to the point where it's not really spinning out anymore, and I just stuck this guy in there, and then I took a mallet, and I have to say I already did this, and I thumped on the end of this hex, smaller hex, just to push this out. So you see how there's only like a short amount of, I guess it's about an inch of threading. So you're not threading it all the way out like a regular standard bolt. I've never seen it. I'm not familiar with this stuff, so this is new to me. So it's just spinning after a certain, you know, in the slot there with the big 3/8 hex, but not coming out. So it has some retention power in there, and you just gotta pop it out once it's just spinning. All right, now I'm gonna do the bottom one and show you that one. So what I was able to do with this lower hex pin, just there's enough clearance here that I just took my mallet and went boom, 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 while I held it from behind so it didn't pop back out. You see I got it started that way, so I didn't have to stand up and jump up and down, push on it hard enough. So when I say, like, I'm gonna take these out, obviously this is a very slow manual process with just a standard hex guide, because I can't go all the way around like you could with the driver bit. But you get the point. So you know what I'm doing when I'm actually taking it apart. You can see that there. Alright, so you can see what I'm doing. It's just a slow process, but so you know what, this is the same on both, it's just obviously this one's lower, has a little more clearance. You see what I'm doing with this pin, I hope. So I'm one-handing this real now. Alright, so you see that guy there. This is what we're actually doing. So if you had a driver just going zzz, zzz, zzz around, that'd be easier. Alright, so I got this one, I suppose, unscrewed, if you want to call it that. So now I'm just going to take this little hex guy and pound it with the Alright, so you see malleting this guy. Boom, 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 boom. And out it comes out the back. Yet again. Alright. So then the trick about this assembly here is it's pretty tight. It's this actually. You see that? I can actually move it a little bit. That way. Okay, you see how that's moving? So you gotta pop that off. So it's this housing here, which is not the same as that. So you see that movement. See where that moves from. But the trick is, it's super, super, super heavy. If you just pop it off and the thing falls down, you don't want to rip out this hose that remains attached to this whole assembly here. So this whole thing, let's see if I can get one. This whole thing is one piece, and it's massively heavy on the heavy duty vans. So that's the trick. So I'm gonna pop that off with my mallet. Obviously, doing this one-handed is awkward, and I'm gonna have to do it with both hands. So hold on a second. You can use that. I saw a guy on one video using a pry bar. Oh, okay, it came loose there. Alright, there it comes. So, I got this coming off, but it's still attached by this hose goes back here. So you need something to hold it. So you either need a second person or a box or, you know, something about this tall, because the hose is not gonna have much give, but just a little bit, enough to get it off basically. So you either need another set of hands or a jack or a little stool or something I can sit on. Maybe even the tire. Maybe you stick the tire here. You can lean that on it. We'll try that. Okay, so I tried to put my tire under there. It doesn't have enough room with this brake line. But this housing can kind of sit on some of the other parts between this arm here and this lower part. It can kind of sit. So there's where those pins go through. And then these guys will come off. The first brake pad obviously was here. And there's nothing holding it on other than it's the rigidity of the being around the rotor there. So that pops off easy. This one has a little guide pin in it. Oh, jeez, you see that? It's heavy and wants to fall down. Don't want to yank out that brake line. So it has this guide pin that did not come on my new set of brakes. So that brake looks fine. This one is way thinner, but not nearly as thin as the other one I had already thrown away. On the other side, I got down pretty low. Like I said, I'm towing a trailer in the mountains, so driving around with those squealing isn't feel very good when I got family of six in the van as we go down a 10,000 foot grade, or from a 10,000 foot pass down a grade. Anyway, so this guy is the trick because it's so heavy and you need it to sit on something. You can kind of sit in there, but we're gonna have to compress whatever this piece is called. That's the hydraulic. That's hydraulic. So what we're gonna do is, that's what the C clamp is for. We're actually gonna compress it from the inside. I'm gonna put the old. I just want to show you this. This retainer clip helps it. It'll help the new one when you take it off. The new pad fit correctly in that shoe there. So this hydraulic piece, this is what's getting pushed on by the hydraulic fluid. So we're gonna clamp from the back side. Let's see if I can point to it. We're gonna clamp from here on one side and onto the old brake pad. We're gonna leave it there. Or if you already took it off because you're excited, put it back on, and we're gonna clamp it and compress this piece. This is gonna go flush. And the problem I had the first time I did it was I kept checking it to see if it was wide enough with the new pads to fit over this guy, over the rotor, and it wasn't. So I kept having to re-clamp it and start over. Now it was just a waste of time. So you want this guy right here. It's like kind of rubber. I don't know what they're really made out of, but it has a little give. There's a little rubber boot. This thinner part where my thumbnail is a rubber boot, and this part that is actually putting pressure on the back of the brake pad to squeeze your rotor. Like I said, man, this is amateur hour here, so if you know more than me, that's cool. You can put in the comments for someone else to read. I'm just getting it done. So we're gonna make this guy go flush with this rubber pad. So once this is flush, then that new brake pad that'll be here and here will fit over the width of the rotor, and that's the trick. So don't waste your time checking it to see if it's wide, if you've got enough clearance, because you don't till that thing is flush in that little rubber boot right there. See if you can see that. Hopefully that's in focus. All right, so you see I've got the C-clamp on the back of that guy. I want to move that off of that piece. There. Oh gosh. Okay, so now you see I have the C-clamp on the back of that housing assembly, and then I have it on the old brake pad. And the reason for that is because you want to push down on this guy, wherever it went, that guy right there. Okay, so China clamps, this thing sucks. It was cheap. Don't do what I did. Get an expensive one or anything that has a bigger guy than this, because you can only get so much torque on that with your hand, and it just is super difficult. And I ended up using this crazy little alligator guy that my dad happened to have in his truck to twist it once it got tight. Because once it's tight, it doesn't, you know, it's giving resistance, and that's the whole point. Alright, so I'm gonna start clamping this guy down. Alright, so as you gotta tighten the C-clamp down and get this hydraulic guy recessed flush there. I'm gonna open the hood and open up my brake fluid so that if it's pushing any out, you know, brake fluid, and that's brake fluid. You know, Chevy G30s have a dual system, as I understand it. I'm just gonna pop one of these guys open so that any pressure can just push out a little brake fluid. So I suppose if your brake fluid is full, you're all right. If it's not full, you might want to get more brake fluid to add to it, because probably some will come out. So I put a rag here yesterday. A little bit dripped out. Wasn't much though. Just need to have a little give, so when we're clamping that, boot guy down, it has a little give. Any give is a benefit when you have a crappy C-clamp. So that's the story. Now I'm going to start tightening this guy with my little alligator gar here. All right. Alright, so this is a very manual experience because, like I said, I don't have good stuff, or the right stuff, but this is already starting to depress a little bit. And I just have to keep going round and round on this guy. Oh, it's difficult. That's just a crappy handle, like I said. So to get a C-clamp with a good handle, or it's just gonna take longer, like I said. So see, I'm just trying that. Just doing my best to get this clearance here. That guy needs to be flush in that boot. This rubber ring on the left side where my finger is, and this metal piece, the metal piece needs to be flush with that rubber boot, or it won't clear the rotor. Alright, so you can see my effort is paying off, because this boot, which you can barely see now, it's almost flush. So I just gotta keep going until it is flush. Otherwise, like I said, found out the hard way, it just isn't enough clearance. Alright, so you can see now that those are basically flush. As far as I can tell, that'll be enough. But I noticed some brake fluid dripping down there. You can see it. So it's definitely squeezing some out. So that's why you want to lift that guy up. Open it up because it's going to want to... That's disgusting. I should have put my rag there again. Alright, I got a little lazy and didn't put the rag. Now it's dripping down on all my components. So that's exciting. Yay, don't do that. There's a, like I said, amateur hour. But I have that ready to receive the new brake pads. Here are the new brake pads. Nice and clean.
Let's go in the trailer. I'll come back out.
Compare that to the old ones. Look at ugly. They did the job for I don't know how long. Those were on there since before I got the van, approximately 30,000 miles ago. So you can see similarities. Check this out. New ones are a little bit thicker. Gotta stop the big boy. Alright. I'm gonna put those on. Do the interior one first, which is... Also, definitely use any kind of gloves, actually, because there's so much brake dust on these things that your hands will be nasty. Yesterday, my hands required multiple scrubbings. So I was like, started with no glove on that hand and still dirty. Having a glove on this hand is nice, because I stopped, had a little bite to eat. And I had at least one hand that was clean. Alright. So, obviously this is upside down. Once you have that little boot depressed in there, it stays. I didn't realize that at first. Like I said, amateur G30 guy. Well, I've been driving this a long time. Fixing things is all new to me. Alright, so this is the interior one. You gotta retain this clip. By retain it, I mean keep it. It's a retaining clip that you need to retain. So just pop it off with a little screwdriver guy. This is the only use for the screwdriver. Just pop that off. Obviously want to keep it in the same shape, so I'll use both hands so I don't jack it up. So just get your screwdriver under that little lip there, and off it comes. Alright, and that can go on the one that it matches. So the interior one is the one. Whoa. Okay. So the interior one is the one with no hole in the assembly. So this is the one that's on the outside, closest to the tire, whereas this is the one closest to the engine side. Okay. Alright. So just get this guy back over. So there's another use of the screwdriver, just to pop that clip back over. I don't know why that won't focus. Hello, focus. Back over the edge there. And that's going to help it sit just right into the little round boot there. I don't know what it's really called. I call it a boot. It's probably something. So we just got to pop these guys over that edge. Alright, so you can see how it's sitting in there. You just want it centered. So it's just going to center it. That middle clip, as far as I can tell, just centers it in that circle. So. And of course, that's the back side of the brake pad. You don't want to put it over the part that actually grips the rotor. You probably know that. Maybe you don't. I don't know. I'm learning all this stuff as I go. So as you can see, I'm just going to set this guy. So the round, if you're like, well, which side's up, which side's down, I forgot. If you don't video yourself so that you can remember where things go, this guy sits. You know, you want the horseshoe curve of it all to match. So see that? Well, this drops right in there. So you want this curve here to match, you know, the directionally. Obviously the ceramic pad part is going to face inward on both these because that's what's gripping the rotor. Alright, like I said, these are upside down because I have that resting upside down. So this is going to be just going to sit right there. So these holes should line up. So the old one has the hole, right? interior one doesn't have a hole, it just goes over it. The external one needs to line up. So the trick is, when you're flipping this over, is to keep them this one doesn't have anything to retain it like this one does. So when you flip it over, this one's going to want to flop out until you get it over the actual rotor here. Okay, so now you see I'm flipping this guy over. So this little part of this little metal ridge fits it, or I don't know if you say fit it, but it goes right into these divots. See where my thumb's pointing? Those divots. So that should all line up. And then that brake pad needs to go inside that slot. Alright, so that internal brake pad, I say internal, it's closer to the engine, goes in that slot. This external brake pad is going outside the rotor there. So the only way for that, so it has to go over that rotor, both sides. That's what's tricky at first. Now that I've done it once, I understand where it's going. Like I said, this guy gets heavy and wants to fall down while you're putting it on, so use 2 hands, have a buddy, something, you know. Alright, so pro tip, and by pro I mean amateur tip. If that's not sitting just right in the groove, it will feel like there's not enough clearance. Well, there won't be enough clearance. Then as soon as you sit it right, then it drops right over. That's the exciting part. You know you've done it right. At first I thought I didn't depress that boot enough like I was talking about. But it was actually just not sitting. This guy, this little metal, I don't even know what it is, guide, wasn't sitting right. Once I sat that right, like that, all of a sudden there's clearance for this guy to go over. So the trick is you gotta get that, all this stuff. This guy is interesting. I thought same thing, like it did something wrong, but actually these move inside the eyelet. This little is part of what the pin's gonna go through, right? But it can also move. It's not solid. You can move it. You can push on it with your finger even, just to get it outside of that retainer there. See how I just did that? So once you push this, like it physically moves. I don't know if it's like rubberized or why it like has a little give without falling out. Once you do that and clear that, you just need to get it to fit or to line up with this hole. See how I'm tapping with my finger there? So this eyelet needs to line up there. So, like I said, I'm one-handing this. Sorry, it's shaky. I'm just gonna take this and you can beat on it with your hand. Thing's solid as a rock. Get a mallet. Just to get that to line up right. Like I said, forgive the shaking, but my dad's gone. Not helping me today. Oh, so I gotta clear this. Same thing. This needs to be pushed out. It feels like, oh, I did something wrong. It's not gonna fit. This eyelet needs to physically move that way through the caliper frame, whatever that's called. Sorry, I don't know the terms. Alright, so I got this eyelet recessed back in there. And now it will fit over. You see how I can clear that now? Or just about. And this whole thing just needs to line up. You're like, oh, I don't know what I did right. So it just needs to line up. So obviously the pin's gonna go through this, through the brake pad, through the other side, and it needs to all be aligned. So we need to see clear air through there, or else that wind is, middle of the afternoon Wyoming wind is here. Alright. Or else this pin, is not gonna make it through. Actually, this way. Like, alright, so we're gonna work on that and I'll show you that. Alright, so as long as all this is seated right, this should just go up. If it doesn't feel like it wants this big old cast iron thing doesn't feel like it wants to move towards the rotor, it's probably because this eyelet's catching back here. This one right there, wherever that guy is, that thing's catching and you just need to get it cleared, get enough clearance that way. It's not because the brake pads are too wide or something. Alright, so now, looks like we got this better lined up. Let's see. We have it lined up right. Nope. So this actually needs to come, if it's resting all the way against the rotor, the arm, it actually isn't gonna clear right. So you're gonna need 2 hands, just line those up. Don't forget to stick this pin through, but the hex side is on the back side. A moment ago I was trying to stick it through the front. It did not work. Alright, so I line those up, put the pin through. You can see it's wants to come through this side now. Sorry, not focus. So we gotta push this through enough. That lines up and we can start threading it back in. The 3/8 hex. And we'll do the same thing to the bottom. We just want these to hold in place so it doesn't come flopping off on us. Alright, so I started threading this, got a pin back in with the 3/8 hex. So, obviously everything's backwards because we're working from this side, so it feels like left is actually tightening because you're working from behind. There you go. Now, tighten it up. Tighten it up, tighten it up. Then I'm going to do the same thing with this side. So we got to make sure these line up. Let's see. Make sure this guy lines up. This eyelet needs to line up so I can get it through there, but I'm going to need both. Alright, so before this is screwed in, it has a little give, so when it's resting on the rotor, it's actually not going to have the right clearance. Once you lift it up a touch, pull it back like 1/8 of an inch or whatever, this guy will thread through. And then you got to make sure it's the same here. See how it has a little give? You just got to line it up.
Yep.
Alright, so that one I was actually able to start threading through by hand. I didn't know I could do that. Got babies crying in the background. So start threading that guy through, and then you can tighten it up. See, it's lined up now, so we're good. Once it all lines up, it just goes in. I didn't. So, alright. But it has to be lined up just right, or else none of it will go through, and none of it will sit right. Once it's seated right, it'll go in, no problem.
You don't have to sleep. Just go lay down.
Alright, so once again, I'm just, manually tightening these guys. My kid wants to get in the van, but that's not good. I don't want the jack to come off. Got my foot's under here. Alright. 6,000 pounds of Chevy on your foot would not feel good. Alright, so just tighten those up till they are flush. It's easier to know actually than loosening them, because when you're loosening them, like, oh, I think it's out enough. This one we know when it's all the way in. Same up here. Alright, so I'm going to tighten those. You don't have to watch that. Alright, so you can see that I have this tightened up and there's no more thread showing. And it's not moving anymore. Same with this guy. Obviously you're going to want to check those. You don't want your brake components coming loose on the road. And you tighten that up. You can see these guys are sticking back through. Now there's not as much spacing there as when I first took them apart, because I presume the brake pads, have so much more surface area that they're not as close together. All right. So I'm gonna tighten that up, put the wheel back on, my lugs, old brakes, bye. And I'm gonna go pour some fluid into my reservoir to replace what dripped out. All right, so even though I had stuff dripping out of my, what do you call this, brake fluid reservoir, I went to fill some, but like it's barely any actually came out. I mean, let's be honest. See how full that is. So some dripped down, whatever. Here we go. Just gonna put this back in. I'll check it when I'm on the road, but honestly, look, more's coming out as I press it down. Then, if I had added any more, it just would have poured out. Okay, so you get the point. Don't put in brake fluid unless you check it and see that it's actually lower. See the minimum? Mine's way at the top. Okay, anyway, if I can do it, you can do it. Hopefully this helped you a lot to know what you're looking for. These are all the tools I used. Main guy, 3/8 hex. This thing to turn my crappy C-clamp. I used a mallet. You can probably use whatever to bang on that. But the mallet's nice because then you're not like denting anything. Extra thing to pop these pins through. Obviously you gotta get your tires off, however you're gonna do that. Have a jack stand. Safety first. I'm an amateur. Hopefully I helped you. Bye.